Welcome back again. You're still watching us here on The Breakfast Show. As we said earlier, we're going to be talking about the second phase of Egyptian's parliamentary elections that took place on Sunday and Monday in 13 governorates, including Cairo. And the turnout was quite higher than the first phase, maybe not to the expected amount or number of people, but with all the circumstances and maybe possibly, at least this person I've spoken to many voters who said that maybe they're not particularly very much aware of the individual seats. However, for the love of Egypt, as the list seems to have won the majority, and there will be a rerun for the individual seats, or some of the individual seats in various constituencies, and that shall be on the 1st of December. Preliminary results are coming out here and there to talk more about the Egyptian parliamentary second phase elections. What's going to happen next, and where will Egypt be heading after the first parliament, after the 30th of June revolution takes place? We're going to be talking with our guest for this morning, Mr. Ambassador Ali El Hefni, former assistant to the Foreign Ministry. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good morning, sir, and a very warm welcome. Sir, how do you read the second phase of the Egyptian parliamentary elections concerning the participation, the preliminary figures which were revealed by the sources up till now? How do you read the second phase of the parliamentary elections as we are expecting the runoff to take place between most of the candidates for the individual seats on the 1st and 2nd of December for the Egyptians here?
Well, it seems that we had a better participation. It's not that important. We're expecting to have much more important participation. And it seems that Egyptians, or the voters who have the right to vote at such elections, they are not going to be as positive as we would have thought or we expect until we fulfill certain tasks, first of which we have to make voters understand what is at stake here. What is behind all this. I mean, the voters, they have participated this time, but they didn't have sufficient information about the whole electoral
process, or about the candidates, or about what
mainly
exactly?
Mainly about the candidates, but also about the process and what is at stake exactly. There is a gap between the voters and the candidates. A big gap. The candidates, they did not play their role. They did not introduce themselves in an appropriate manner. The voters, they do not know them. We have so many new figures. And then as far as the lists are concerned, they do not understand what is it composed of. Whom is what is the list composed of as political parties or coalitions and so on. Up till now, we all have a big interrogation point about the parliamentary groups that we will be dealing with in few days' time, once we finish with the process. Who will be representing the majority, who will be representing the opposition. So there are certain things that are ambiguous and for the voters. And this is one of the reasons why we didn't have that much of a participation. I believe that the situation would change and should change, and we have to work on changing it when we come to the following elections, general elections or legislative elections by 2020. I really hope so.
Yeah.
I really hope so. But we have to think about it. I mean, it's around the corner.
Yes, of course.
It's nothing in the history of nations.
Yeah, but we're talking. I mean, let's look at the short run, the first session of the parliament after a couple of months. In this regard, how do you see or how do you believe the preview of the upcoming parliament would be looking like? in terms of division of lists, individuals, you spoke about opposition. How do you preview that?
It's a big question mark so far. We have to wait and see how the parliamentary groups are going to be composed. But let me mention something here, very important, I mean, in relation to whatever we have been discussing earlier. Now, the nation is faced with important threats and real problems. And this has not been reflected in our language, all as a society, with the voters and in particular with the youngsters. And the media didn't play the role it was supposed to play in this respect. If you watch the different programs, the talk shows, it does not reflect in an appropriate manner the amount of threats and challenges that the nation is faced with. This is one thing. The other thing is we did not also reflect, and especially in the video, I'm talking here about the television,
Yes.
and including the state television, not just the
Private
the
sector.
private ones. Whatever has been taken as sound decisions so far, since June 30, 2013, the sound policies that have been followed by the state, we need some more of documentaries. We need television to be everywhere in Egypt, wherever we are, working hard in realizing certain important projects that will have an important impact on the life of the Egyptian and youngsters. This hasn't been reflected sufficiently. Should we have done this? Should we have exposed the amount of threats and challenges that the nation is faced with at the time being, has been facing, and it's still going to be faced with? I think that the voters and I think that the youngsters would have had a better comprehension of the overall situation in Egypt.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt here, please, Minister,
Yes,
but
please.
because Mr. Wazir, you mentioned youngsters or the youth
Yes.
several times, and that's why I question here, why haven't we seen quite a large participation by the youth in these elections? You know, the youth who have led change of the country, have led two revolutions, yet they seem to have ignored the parliamentary elections and reflecting a strong message. Not very clear what this message is, but how do you see this gap increasing between the youth and Egypt as a whole?
There is a lack of communication between the youth and Egypt. There is a lack of transparency. We have to be more transparent with the youth and to reach them in a more intelligent way, in a better way. We haven't done this so far, and this is why they feel as if they were neglected, not taken into account, not taken into consideration. Their aims, their opinions are not taken into consideration. And as long as we are going to be facing this dilemma, we're going to have a lack of participation, lack of positiveness from the youth.
Yes, Mr. Ambassador, how can we solve this problem? As you have kindly mentioned, that maybe the youth are not feeling that they have been included in the equation. Although we have seen many parties having young people as members, we have seen the coalition including youth as well, but yet, of course, they are not participating in the proper way. So how can we find a way out in order to bridge this gap between the policymakers and the state and the youth?
Listen, we are living in what we call the information era.
Yes.
Everything is about information. If we think that such information is through the social media, we're making a big mistake. When I'm talking about transparency, we have to offer to the youth all that's related to the threats, the challenges, what is at stake, the priorities that the nation is faced with. If I take only one aspect of what we are discussing here, I mean figures. Everything has become a matter of figures. Do you think that we have been provided by the appropriate figures concerning all aspects of our life, whether it has to do with politics or economics or the social conditions in Egypt? I mean, we lack a lot of information. There is a scarcity of knowledge. If we take, for example, the example of China, every day in China, you are inundated with figures. The people, they become more aware of the reality of what's happening in their country by dealing with such figures, by knowing such figures. I mean, statistics are very important, and it has to do with transparency. We have to be more transparent with the youth, and we have to provide them with all the figures that have to do with every aspect of our daily life in Egypt.
Mr. Ambassador, this parliament, hopefully, if and when formed, is going to have a different role, don't you see? More than just the ordinary, typical opposition, you know, the sort of like pull and pull, you know, push and pull rope between what's going on in, you know, within the parliament. There's a lot of problems in the country that needs to be resolved, and the president or the government on its own cannot handle this burden. Therefore, everything has been postponed, always saying, wait until the parliament comes and everything will go into law and order. What do you think should be the most important priority files that should be renovated, reconstructed by the parliament as soon as it is formed? I know we have a very long list, but in order for the individuals to feel that there is an actual change in the country, what should be the priority list?
The list should be, should relate to the priorities of the Egyptians. I mean, what are our priorities as Egyptians, and especially as far as the youth is concerned? So we expect from the next parliament to be up to the responsibility and to be fully aware of the importance of that moment in the modern history of Egypt. We had an absence of parliament for a number of years now. So there is a lot of catch-up to make. But there are a huge amount of legislations that are pending. Very old legislations that need to be renovated.
That's why I asked you, Mr. Ambassador, are they going to be starting with amending the Constitution, or by applying new laws, or by, you know, fixing or recategorizing the budget, for instance? There's so much that is very interrelated, and we're afraid as normal citizens that we're going to have to sit, watch them fight over each other, and then nothing at the end is going to be resolved. And time is a very important concept here. We are running out of time.
Talking about the modification of the Constitution, I think that this is a false debate. Is this a priority? Do we really need this? I mean, is it logical that we vote a new constitution?
I don't think so.
in the beginning of 2000 and...
But you'd be surprised on the number of people who would have this kind of mentality and ideology.
To amend the Constitution again?
Well, the people is there, is observing, okay, and the Egyptian people is a very smart people, so at the proper time they are going to sanction whoever has engaged us in such false debates. We don't need that debate right now. We have other priorities, and we have to attend it to the economic situation, and we have to give a focus to all the legislations pertaining to the economy and the social conditions of Egyptians, especially in view of the fact that we have a lot of resources that haven't been exploited. So I think that we have to focus mainly on the economy and the mega projects that the nation is wishing to realize in the coming months. There are many deals that need the approval of the Parliament that we have signed or that we are preparing to sign in the coming few months. So this has to be a priority. Focusing on the problem of unemployment is very important, and this is a priority for the youth. The status of education in Egypt, the medical services, but if you ask me my opinion, I think that we have to give a prior attention to the next local elections. We need to have a more decentralized system in Egypt, and we have to reconsider any legislation having to do with the local elections. We have to be having shortly 2 new local elections, and to make sure that we are going to elect the people that are going to be effective and are going to make a difference in the life of people at the different levels, the town, the village, the district, and so on. This is what we need. We need some more serious work at different levels by those people that are going to be elected at those councils.
Finally, sir, as a politician, what do you need from the coming parliament? As a citizen, what are the main important demands which we are expecting from the upcoming parliament?
To make it easy for the executive, make it easy for the head of states and the government to work in an environment of a productive environment.
Very important.
I'm sorry?
It's very important to have a high production, of course.
And to make it easy for the government to work on the main problems in the coming period. We don't need to add to whatever existing problems that we are having. We have to avoid any skirmishes or quarrels that we don't need in the coming period.
Let's hope so.
We have succeeded in providing a big deal of safety for the people, and we have recovered a lot of our stability, but we are still faced with problems. I mean, the incident of El Arish, the terrorist act that we have been the victim of yesterday is the proof. But of course, we have recovered a lot of our stability. We have to maintain it. We have to enhance such stability, and we have to work on the economy. The economy is the key to solving so many of our problems.
On this note, we're going to have to end it here. Ambassador Ali El Hefni, former assistant to the Foreign Ministry, thank you very much for your insight and for joining us here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
And now our viewers will go to watch this report about the sport wrap-up for yesterday, and then we'll be back to resume our segment for the breakfast show, so stay tuned.